Hi, everyone. Welcome to Yurugu, Chapter 6, discussion, Rhetoric and Behavior. So let's just let's start with the summary of this chapter, everyone. So I'll start. So basically, we learn about how it is just in the nature of the European to live in a cycle of being hypocritical and using their words to ultimate effect when it comes to being deceitful and operating in untruths. This is how we discovered they have managed to take over the globe by using their words to spread lies, do something. I mean, say something and then do the opposite. They've spent their entire existence living this way, living a lie, conquering by lying. I guess someone would call it trickonology, using tricks and lies and deceit to get ahead. And that's literally what they've done to conquer the world. And once the global collective understands like the power of words and how they've been used by white people, we'll begin to see some non-white progress in this war opposed to European progress. I'll pass it to Ezekiel.
Thank you. For me, to summarize the chapter, I felt I believe she's really painting a picture about the European and how they behave. I've noticed for a while that especially in politicians, right, that they say things but they don't do them, and I see that being a common theme of people in power, of in those kind of positions, that they say things that they're going to do but they don't do them. And it seems like nothing happens to them. So I thank Dr. Ani for this chapter, because now I can really verbalize, how hypocritical these people are and why they should not be trusted, because it's their behavior to act that way. Let me go ahead and popcorn tray.
So my summary is, I actually wrote it down. European culture thrives off deception of self and others. And cannot trust anything that the Europeans present to you. And I think it's so funny how the chapter begins with the Iraqi-Iranian war, and how that right there itself is deception. Make this war infinite. Let's go over there and say we're gonna stop it and just keep killing people. It's just, there's so much contradiction and hypocritical ways of being. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, we're gonna get more in depth, but European culture is a culture that started off deception of self and deception of others. Very untrustworthy group of people.
Yeah, both Bush and his daddy.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm not gonna pass it to Mary.
Yeah, 1 second. My notes is not loading, so
just a summary though.
Yeah, I wrote down my summary, but
sorry. Yeah, yeah, I agree with what Ezekiel was saying. I feel like this chapter finally gave me like the language to describe a lot of things that I feel like are so essential to like liberalism, what we see today, but I've never been able to describe it well myself. And yeah, it was really interesting to know that European culture, or Asili, is the only one where you have to have the rhetorical ethic to successfully carry out the other ethic of like conquering and imperialism. And like, yeah, I just see it in everything. And like, I feel like she answered a lot of like the question that Swa has been asking for chapters, like what's more dangerous, like someone who believes the lie, like a white person who believes the lie, a rhetorical ethic, or someone who doesn't. And she says it's basically like the liberal. And so that's like, that was really, I don't know, I really like that. There were just so many things I was reading this chapter that I was like, holy shit, like we really see this today. I'll pass it to Ray.
Really quick, I wanted to add to what Sarah said. Malcolm X said that the same thing, talked about the liberals and the conservatives. He said the liberals were more dangerous, and now we can see why. So,
yeah. And then for my summary, I wrote quickly here, is like Europeans basically use their power to not only control like rhetoric and behavior of non-white people and themselves, but also create the illusion that non-white people have a voice and can act the way they want to act, which is all an illusion because white supremacy controls all of it.
Beautiful.
Oh, and then I'm gonna popcorn Mary if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready now. Thank you. Yeah, so in my summary, I just wrote, actually after listening to everybody else's, Sarah's summary and Ray's summary, you really just concise my summary, so I'm gonna only read half of my summary now, thank you. But where was it? It relies, other than rhetorical ethic being repeated like a million times, that word is now drummed into my psyche forever. And understanding what it means for the European is that it relies on the blind follower to spread their desired intention of the European asili by just wanting to be altruistic via religion, or like based on their asili, they believe that teaching English is like the best thing they could do for someone, but you're really drumming out their culture. And so like there's nothing worse than a happy I just want to spread love and peace individual literally destroying the culture. Based off their kind intentions. And so I really enjoyed this chapter for the way that she broke it down several times. And I loved the quotation from, what was the name of the we'll get there. I have it somewhere. Yeah, but yeah, that's my summary. I think everybody summarized now, right?
I don't think Ash as well.
Oh, Ashley, popcorn.
A quick summary, I guess, was that, like a lot of people were saying, the European asili uses rhetoric to conquer, and that, it's not just about how they, because like she quotes a lot of people who show that, okay, Europeans say the opposite of what they do the opposite of what they say. But what Dr. Ani is trying to say is there's no intention of even trying to do what they say, right? Like it's not like they're trying and there's this moral failure. It's that it's just a guise all the way through. And I think I really appreciated that, because I think for all of us, we have moments where we think about how absurd this world is, and we try to like rationalize it with what people say, and it never connects, and that's because it's not supposed to connect. And so I really liked that. It's just about hypocrisy, the use of like Christianity and like the Christian ethic as a veil, basically, which I really liked, especially when you think about like the whole Protestant work ethic and how a lot of European white people literally have like never worked for anything in this country and have reaped all of the benefits from the actual like non-white people who have done a lot of the actual labor in America and abroad. And I just thought that this whole chapter appealed to me because I feel like we have to adopt all of that fake rhetoric in terms of, can you close the door? Thanks. In terms of like applying for jobs, going to college, like even applying for housing, everyone has to be the PR person and be who they actually aren't. And it's all about a presentation instead of like actual. Yeah, so yeah.
You don't have anything to share from earlier chapter, in the beginning of chapter, from 312 or 313?
Yes, I had when I was learning about the Bushes, how they were sustaining the war, and the place that is known as the Middle East. I wrote that the government has been lying to the American people, and what they have created is a thing that I term, it could be a term already created, but I wrote sustainable warfare. You know, white supremacy has created sustainable warfare, but which also equals sustainable death, you know, sustainable suffering, which are all like microcosms of white supremacy, and they're all like effects of white supremacy. So I thought that was interesting, and how they have documents proving that, like, really fund whichever side that is losing. So if you're like pro-Israel, just understand that you're not pro anything. You're pro white supremacy. If you're pro Iran, you're also pro white supremacy, because these places are governed by white supremacy. You know, white people control what goes on over there, not the people in there. Yeah.
I would like to also add some context to that, in that the money that they were using to, like, you know, fund like these groups in Iran or Iraq, they literally got that money from, you know, selling arms to like Nicaraguan like militias who were like selling drugs in South Central. So like, and like flooding like LA with like crack and cocaine. That's how the government got the money to like send those arms to Iran. So like, to add more context to like the hypocrisy of, like, at the same time they're killing Black people and putting them in prisons for selling drugs that they actually planted into those places to sell arms to the Iranians.
And also like decentralize more just policies in Latin America, like in Nicaragua. It was like that, not just to destabilize, but like to counter things that would actually bring people a little bit more of justice there. So super fun.
4 wars. So many wars. I also something from
page. Well, yeah, hold on. I want to comment about the Bushes, because very interesting that we have like a whole legacy of presidents being like Bush and his daddy, and they both, you know, invaded like brown countries, you know, and it's just like business as usual in the context of white supremacy. But this is a business of death making, and as we have as we know, if you understand white supremacy to the capacity that some of us do in this book club, we know, like Trey mentioned, that in the so-called area of Middle East, like that's gonna always be a perpetual state of conflict or war making until this problem is solved. And yeah, that's a guarantee right there. And we can thank white supremacy and also Bush and his daddy.
And I think like our generation, the way that our generation exists comes a lot from the lies that were told, especially like in the Iraq war and stuff. Like, I feel like there's such a divide from the generation before us, in that like my parents watch MSNBC and actually like believe what these people tell them, versus like I feel like all of us from a pretty young age do not believe anything that they say. And I think a lot of that comes from like just the blatant hypocrisy that we see, and at least us as a generation being able to decode it better than the generations before us. I think personally, like the whole Iraq war is just utterly like insane, to invade a place and say you're liberating it and then basically like ruin their power grid, access to water, etc.
I have one more thing to say just about the Bushes also. I think it's like so disturbing how the mainstream media over time is trying to like kind of rehab the image of the Bushes, because it was like kind of because of Iraq, like their war like crimes were just like so clear, but like with printing his paintings that he does in the shower, and it's like, oh, like he's healing psychologically, and like I'm sure they're gonna do that with Obama as well. Yeah, it's it's like disgusting, but just like everyone knew they sucked, but it's over time they're trying to erase that. Like, that's so wild. Even like, you know, more liberal people who used to hate him, but yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a good segue into like the first thing I wanted to bring up from the reading about how they start about how she talks about the like the doctors on TV and them I guess she said ideal, or how they create this image of doctors on, in specific this example, how they create this image of, you know, doctors always wanting to help people. Like, so you assume a doctor is always wanting to help people, just like, you know, I'm sure during that time, you know, they painted a picture that, you know, they were invading to go and help those people, as they do with all wars, right? America has gotten great at creating this image that we are trying to help the world. You know, that our presidents, when they go to places, when we are in places, we are there to help people. When, I mean, like Ash was saying, you know, none of us are fooled, right? Like, we all know what their true intentions are and what they're really there for, which is just to spread terror and create death to worship.
Well said. I want to share something I think is important. I have a comment about it as well.
Wait, is this past?
This is 314.
Well, then I wanted to respond to what Ezekiel said.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ezekiel, especially about the whole idea about the doctor. I think something that's really interesting too is like when you like go to college and you hear people talk about, or even like kids, they always want to like do good. Like whenever they ask them, what do you want to be? I want to help people. And then like by the time they go to like college, you can just see like the blatant, like, I just want to make money and I just want to like be successful and have a home and fuck anything else. And I think it's just very interesting, like, because we're told to like want to do these things because they're like such noble positions or whatever, noble jobs. But really, like, even the people who hold those positions most of the time are doing it out of like their own, you know, like not selfishness, but just like looking out for themselves. And I think it's interesting how they make us live in a fairy tale that like your doctor is just here for you. And even when you watch commercials, it's like you're living in a fairy tale. Like everything is just so nice. There's no conflict. No one has any like ulterior motives or intentions. And that's not the actual reality.
Yeah, like later on in the chapter, I literally like got so angry reading this, and I wrote like fantasy, like what this white man is saying. This is a fantasy.
A running joke now. Like, trust me, I'm a doctor. Like, it's their running joke now. Like, I'm wearing a white coat. Everything I say is valid.
Yeah, whiteness is good. Trust whiteness. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm gonna so from 314. Let me read this real quick. So she says the European mind is a political one, and for this reason, constantly aware of the political effect of words and images as they are used for the purposes of manipulation. By political, I mean to indicate an ego that consistently experiences people as others, as representatives of interest, defined differently, and therefore as conflicting with this ego. The individual is concerned, therefore, with the way in which his verbal expression and the image he projects can influence the behavior of those whom he relates. B, they can influence the behavior of those whom he relates. Be they patients, would-be consumers, neo-colonial subjects, an opposing candidate for office, or an African self-determinist nationalist. This is what is deeply rooted in the American mind, the psychology of public relations, salesmanship, and political strategy. It is in the Euro-American vernacular that the word image is used so frequently. To be concerned with one's image as opposed to oneself is an European characteristic. So I think we should interpret this as, a good takeaway from this could be like, whenever you're talking to a white person, understand that you are in a arena. You know, that conversation is not like a just conversation, because more times than not, they're not going to be truthful with you because it's not in their nature. And that's not, you know, something that, you know, you should like, you know, show animosity for them you should understand, hey, this is their nature, you know, this is like their cultural silly, this is their makeup. So you have to understand that, and like understand how they're using words. And hey, are you answering my questions? Like, are you like, are you making sense right now? You know, so it's really important to understand when you're talking to a white person. It's a political, it's a arena. You know, it's like you have to be really cautious, or you'll be talked in circles and not helped. As I'm sure many of us have experienced as well.
Yeah, I had the exact same thing highlighted verbatim. I wanted to just share my. I totally agree that when you are in a, I guess, communication ordeal with a European person, you have to really lead the conversation through questions, because throughout the whole ordeal, confusion is gonna be a big part of it. They're gonna try to confuse you, or if not try to, through their nature confuse you. I know I interface with a lot of Europeans, and I'm constantly having to remind myself, okay, for me to even talk, I often have to like talk over these people, because they don't listen to me. They literally will start talking as I'm in a mid-thought or mid-conversation with someone else. This is really rude. It's a really rude, like, now what Boss said, it makes sense. It's combat. It's combat, you know. They want to suppress me. They don't want to. They don't want me to. They want to talk over me, and they want me to be confused. So now that I know these things, now I'm just more comfortable talking over them. Like, I don't stop talking. I just talk, and I be heard, and then I'll ask questions about what they say to me. You know? But yeah.
I have one more comment for the quote that both of y'all also, like, what I took away from that quote was like, and not just honestly white people, but like a lot of people who are trying to be like political or radical in some way are more obsessed, or when they speak or share things, are more obsessed with it seeming like they're good or like they have good intention, more than like actually being present and a part in community and active, regardless if they might say something maybe like not exactly how that will be well received. But it's like, I feel like that's just like every white leftist I've ever met is just like obsessed with like, anything I say, no one can like, you know, say something bad about that, but they're not actually like being authentic or like a, you know, like a kind person or anything. So it's just
Wait, can you
weird.
give an example? Like
yeah, like I've like been in organizing spaces where there was conflict, and so they were going, but it was like, and when there was like conflict resolution, like just talking about stuff, when we talk, they just said things in a way so that when I talked about it to other people, like on paper, not like they're not fucked up in any way, or like, you know, like they didn't say anything like racist, or they didn't say anything like problematic or like blah 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 classes, but there was like no actual emotional resolution, and it was just like you know, like you just don't feel like you're like they were being real at all. I know that's really vague, but it's just like very petty, stupid organizing drama. So it's just like, you don't actually care about the work. You just want people to think you're like a good person or like a radical, rather than like actually trying to be real and do that, even if it might be a little messy.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that because I have that part highlighted. For me, you know, a lot of things, especially with the last sentence, to be concerned with one's image as opposed to oneself is a European characteristic. Mm-hmm. There are so many, you know, people, so many, mainly people that came to mind, non-white and white, you know, using her example for the doctor, you know, America has this image, right, of an altruistic doctor. So now anybody who's a doctor is automatically assumed to be, you know, helping people. And that's the image that they're given. But as we all know, like a lot of these doctors are shitty people, right? They're shitty personalities. They don't like life. They hate themselves, right? And And same thing with like even like a protester, you know, they're as soon as you say I'm Black Lives Matter, right? You put the sign in your lawn, like, oh, now I'm supposed to assume that that's a good person because that's the image, right? The image is that Black Lives Matter is trying to help me, but that guy could be a racist fuck, right? You know, as a person, as himself. It's just, so
yeah.
I really thought about like
You guys
social
are
media and how concerned people are with their image, but in real life, their actual selves, they are shitty people, you know? They are terrible people. And yeah, so that quote spoke volumes for me. You know, I thought of a lot of people, and once again, the biggest insult is saying you're acting like a European. If somebody told me that, I might have to lose it.
It's upsetting.
Yeah, I also highlighted that part too. And I had like a lot of different thoughts about it. But now that you guys are talking about it, I'm like thinking about it in a whole nother context, which is really interesting. Like I think that section is really funny in terms of like how people always talk about how it's more white people are more offended when you call them a racist than like anything else. Like because it's the whole image, the idea of what it means to be a racist versus like their actual actions. And I think the whole BLM sign on the lawn is very interesting because it's like, you're not actually going to do anything to redistribute wealth so that Black people could like live in this neighborhood, right? Like that's not actually going to happen, but you can just like put this sign as like a placard or something. And I agree, like it reminds me so much of just people who think they're so-called online activists who like really are posting things, and it's almost like they're trolling because they're being so like overly sensitive to like not say anything and not actually like just like towing a line so that nothing actually changes and nothing actually gets resolved or done. So I thought that was interesting that you guys all said that. But then when I read it myself, I was thinking about the whole idea of like networking and how like nowadays even like children are like taught to network and like build relationships because you can like it'll help you in the future some way, and how sick that is in our society. Like kids go to like entrepreneurial schools now, like entrepreneurial camps and shit like that, especially white kids. And like to think that everything is a business, everything is how you're perceived. And I think that psychologically does so much damage to all of us. That's why going to work is such like psychological damage every day, because you're literally like having to force yourself into the image of what a white person wants you to be. And like if sometimes people work more than they actually aren't, so they forget who they truly are. I know I went through that personally. Like so that's what I was thinking about too.
Yeah, I think this it's really important to correlate all of what everyone's been saying to the fact that we're dealing with egomaniacs. These people don't care about anything but their image, like their ego being satisfied, and they satisfy their ego by the ways we're learning. So it's really important to understand that we're dealing with egomaniacs. This is why it's so important to understand when we're conversing with the whites, the European, with the racist suspects, to understand that this is a warring species, and even the conversation is like a chess game with them, small battle that you have to maneuver.
Yeah, that's why I totally agree. And I think what I had highlighted on page 315 really gives us a high example of the entities that we're dealing with. And it is, I'll just go ahead and read it. It's pretty short. As a cultural trait, it has, however, been described by others, particularly by those who have been made victims of European cunning. Below, an indigenous American describes European behavior. This is from like the words of a indigenous American. So what they have classified, presumably as a Native American. They would make slaves of us if they could, but as they cannot, they kill us. There is no faith to be placed in their words. They will say to an Indian, my friend, my brother. They will take him by the hand and at the same moment destroy him. Remember that this day I warned you to beware of such friends as these. I know the long knives, they are not to be trusted. And this is probably, this person said this probably, I don't know how many years ago, but it's still relevant. It's still accurate. And I think it's still the case for the people who classify themselves as Europeans, who classify themselves as whites. How did y'all feel when y'all read that part? I know that part is, evoked some things in me.
Yeah, absolutely loved that part. It just felt like a haiku. It just felt like true poetry because it resonates with truth. It reminded me of Things Fall Apart of Chinua Achebe's like opening chapter of like the land being taken. But that's what I have to say about it.
For me, it gave me a vivid image of, that there was actually, maybe some, I don't know how you would even call them at the time, but maybe counter racists during that time, warning people. And they knew, so, there's people out there that during that time that knew exactly what was going on. They knew that these people weren't good and that they shouldn't be trusted. So, an Native American telling me this knows that I'm on the right track. It definitely I don't know, I don't trust them.
Yeah, it also gave me an opportunity to just think about, let me just think about what are Native Americans doing right now. They're forced to live on, they're expected to live on reservations, and a few of them are given trinkets of complacency in the form of casinos. So they're giving like, here, I'll give you this casino, which is the vice. People can gamble, which is the vice. So they're just giving like this non-constructive thing for what exactly? Like why? What is the symbolism of giving Native Americans casinos? I guess because the white person who gives them casinos can like profit off the taxes and revenue that it generates. But yeah, I mean, this part reminded me that Native Americans have been decimated, and they have no power, and well, most of them are powerless, but they're quite extinct when it comes to mass media culture, So
yeah, I also wanted to read from page 315. If anyone has anything to rebuttal on what Trey said.
Oh, I just wanted to comment that was a very interesting, that I came to the realization, that now, thinking about the Native American now, they're given so many benefits and trinkets for, complete, what's the word I'm looking for creating or, contributing to a wholly unconstructive industry, And that's the only way that white supremacy is going to let them live, apparently. I don't know. That was very interesting.
Yeah, to comment on what you read at the Native American said, Trey, is that I just wish I could implant this like thinking pattern and like every non-white person. I think that we would have much more success in solving this problem if everyone was aware of that. Hey, maybe don't trust people who have historically, decimated your people, miseducated you, brainwashed you, castrated you, and all of the other horrible things that I would take them in infinity to list. But yeah, if more non-white people could heed this message, it would be really constructive for solving this problem.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it reminded me of I'm reading this other book, and they're talking about how in like the 1930s when Black workers were like organizing, white people would try to get them into their unions only because they didn't want them to like, if the white people were on strike, they didn't want them to like work and take their jobs. So they would like put them in their unions and then like give them no power. And then when there would be unions that were like basically like, there was a union in Alabama. Oh, it's called Settlers. There was a union in Alabama that was like basically all run by like Black people. and they had a lot of power, the sharecroppers union. And then like white people started getting into the union, and then they would just like take over and make all these concessions with the white bosses, so that all these black people had no power. And you see it consistently happen when like you make alliances like with these people. Their intentions are not to like help you. Their intentions are to like benefit from whatever your work you've already done, and then like run off with like the spoils of war. And it's so frustrating that we constantly like fall into this pattern. I think that book is like a must read, because it like this book tells you the thought process, and that book shows you like the very specific examples of this consistently happening. Like, yeah. I mean, there's a point where like white people were on the side, like white workers were on the side of the police in shootouts against black workers, like in Alabama. Like, yeah, it's a lot.
Oh, shit.
Settlers, okay. Definitely gonna read that. Wow. Okay, I wanted to read from page 315, a little bit further down from where Trey had read, where they start talking about the hypocrisy model. Let me just see where I want to read from. Hypocritical behavior is sanctioned and rewarded in European culture. The rhetorical ethic helps to sanction it. European culture cannot be understood in terms of the dynamics of other cultures alone. It is a culture that breeds hypocrisy, in which the hypocrisy is a supportive theme, a standard of behavior. Its hypocritical nature is linked to the Platonic abstraction, to objectification, to the compartmentalization of the person and the denial of the emotional self. Below Havoc characteristically understands the case. Another thing noticeable, okay, I won't read that part. Okay, so when I had read this initially, more so, when I read that initially, what had come to my mind was the way in which, like, if you are like introduced into Hollywood, or in order to like succeed in Hollywood, you have to be like the opposite of what you are. So if you're a black person, you have to like kind of be in a begging position. You have to be inferior. If you are masculine by image, by characteristic, they effeminize you. You have to be soft. You have to be you have to be a hypocrite in order to thrive in this society. Like, yeah. But that's how I feel. But what were your thoughts that came to mind when the hypocrisy model, when she started talking about the hypocrisy model?
For me, when she started talking about hypocrisy, I just thought about like politicians a lot. It might be because, when my dad comes home, he watches CNN all day, every day. So as I'm walking throughout the house, I might be catching glimpses of just politicians lying all day. So for me, I really thought about politicians and how they consistently lie, and then by lying, they continue to be reelected. So I thought, when I read that section, I was just thinking of all the examples of how like hypocrisy is like sanctioned and like allowed, and that was one thing for me, like how you can continuously lie, not do the things you say you're going to do, but then continuously like hold your position and get reelected, and you actually have non-white people actually campaigning for you, the very people that you've done nothing for, or that you say that you're going to do stuff for and you've done nothing for, the ones actually advocating that you stay in the position you're in, so yeah.
It's so true. It got my mind thinking about like how many different ways like the European culture even like endorses like the everyday civilian and person to do their bidding. Like let's say for a war, they'll say your country needs you, but you're destroying someone else's country, but under the same logic, and you are now a hero, but you are killing and murdering people. Like it relies on hypocrisy in order to thrive. Like the whole functioning of the European Assyria, and so many different examples through history of can be pinpointed from just reading, like will come to mind from reading this chapter?
Yeah, oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry, I had written down a note, a statement. I just wanted to say it. Where is it? Okay, yeah, like being a soldier to fight their countries and destroying other countries, doing the bidding of the government and carrying and calling them heroes is a living example of the hypocrisy model. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like everything. Everything is like in the system of white supremacy forces. I would say hypocrisy is a standard. That's a standard business, right? So I see everyone being a hypocrite. Like this is like a trait they've given everyone to just be like hypocritical. Like I want to say idiot because like like I'll have a conversation with like a black person and we'll like talk about racism. I'll tell them it's kind of like it's a war happening. And it's something that all black people should be serious about. And then the next moment I'll catch them dancing on Instagram. So I'm like this is a hypocritical like nature that has been given to all of us. Like the white people have made us like them, so we are hypocrites and we're also very insane. And why is that? It's because
I was gonna say Trey, you can go because
real fast. All right, so I agree. And what Squad, Mary, and Quaco were saying.
Quaku.
What I say, Quaco?
Yes. Millionaire every time Trey say something new.
Hypocrisy and like contradictory behavior is encouraged. They want this. They want this from all of us. I'll read this and I'll give more context. So it's on page 316. The rhetorical ethic is made possible by the fact that hypocrisy as a mode of behavior is a valued theme in European life. The same hypocritical behavior that its present sanctions. Again, value refers to that which it is encouraged and approved in a culture. European culture is constructed in such a way that successful survival within it discourages honesty and directness and encourages dishonesty and deceit. The ability to appear to be something other than what one is, to hide oneself, one's motives, and intent. People who are duped by others and relate to a projected image are considered fools or country bumpkins. So this is the mentality that I have experienced when dealing with people who have been classified as white. I personally have had this mindset where most things I said were lies at a point in my life, like if not everything. And it wasn't like real lies. It was just that hey, I just remember like saying I had things I didn't have. Saying I've done things I didn't do, like existing in a very hypocritical way. Like I'll text someone, I miss you too. Like those types of things, like things like that. Like like my emotions were like they weren't even in my back pocket. They were away from my person and buried somewhere. You
said I miss you too.
But so yeah, this is and I also like you would see white parents encouraging their kids. Oh, it's okay to just tell a little white lie, and then they become efficient liars at early in age. So yeah, I mean, I was a victim of these things. I'm doing better, but
you're doing amazing. White lie can be something like a white lie can result to murder.
Right,
it's not light.
I wanted to add, so I don't want to backtrack too much, but I wanted to talk about the, what she says on 315 at the top about a rhetorical ethic is not a deep-lying assumption. It is a superficial verbal expression that is not intended for assimilation by the members of the culture that produced it. Then she talks about like the gap. Anthropologists talk about the gap in all cultures between thought and deed, between ideas and actions. The gap to which I'm referring, however, is between verbal expression and belief or commitment, between what people say and what they do. So for Trey's example, you know, and what Swal was kind of saying earlier, I really understand like how we are all doing this, right? We're all telling people things that we don't mean. We're all saying things that we isn't true. Like I'll say I'll do something, but there's already when I said I had no intention of doing it, right? And that's like the rhetorical ethic for us. Yeah, and that leads me to talk. I wanted to talk about, you know, the values versus avowed values, because I thought that was very important. And so how she said avowed values belong to the rhetorical ethic, and they are merely professed, which find expression only verbally, which are not indicative of behavior, belong to what she says the rhetorical ethic. So I thought that was interesting. You know, I've only known values, right? I didn't know what avowed values were, and how that's actually a thing, right? Like she actually defined it. You know, people saying they care about things and they don't. You know, they never cared about it, and they just say they do. You know, like Black Lives Matter, you know, but nobody, you know, people don't care about Black lives, you know. So.
Yeah, I wanted to add some stuff to say. I wanted to respond to what I think Swa and also Trey was saying, because I also have lied a lot in my life too, and I think well, we all lie, but one thing that really is just the lie is so obvious is like whenever you just like go in a job interview and it's like, why do you want this job? It's like, so I don't fucking die, you know, so I have food to eat. Like, why the fuck do you think I want this job? Like, I need income, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, sorry, should I not curse?
Yeah, do we need to swear?
Okay, sorry, I will stop swearing. Why do you think I need this job? You know, like, I think that it's very obvious that we are all like lying to each other all the time. And I think that the part that Kwaku read was really important on the top, where when she says it is a superficial verbal expression that is not intended for assimilation by the members of the culture that produced it. Like, I feel like whenever anyone is just like, isn't that crazy? That's just what I'm gonna say. You know, it's a superficial verbal expression. You know, there's no intention that anyone is actually going to do this or supposed to do this. Yeah. And I think like that is always the like answer to that, instead of indulging people and like, yeah, I can't believe they do this. It's like, no, you can, because it's superficial.
Yeah, so I want to respond to what you just said, also what Kwaku said. With like the Black Lives Matter, it's like a perfect example. Like, because the best white people are going to do for this so-called Black Lives Matter is go out and have fun with you guys in the streets, you know, because that's fun to white people. Going and running up and down the streets and in crowds, that's what they like to do. So they're just having fun. They don't really like care about the Black Lives Matter, or else they would like be about, you know, producing justice, telling their white counterparts, hey, stop killing these Black people and like get out of Iraq, and like just stop killing all the colored people, you know, just stop killing their kids, stop raping their kids, stop kidnapping their women and their men, just stop doing all this stuff, white people, please. But instead they're just in crowds with the Blacks and the other non-whites roaming about in the streets, you know, saying Black Lives Matter. It's not trying to produce justice. The rhetorical etiquette is like, yeah, Black Lives Matter, Black people, but not, you know, not us white people. We're still like gotta learn how to develop those feelings. Maybe in a couple hundred years we'll get there, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I agree with the whole like it's sport and fun to them. You know, I went to a BLM protest, and as I was walking into it, I saw a white man with a gas canister smiling, you know, because he knew he was going to be up to just wretched behavior and just, you know, anarchic behavior, and it was just very interesting.
Yeah, I wrote down a small note, and it's based on what y'all folks were saying. So it's just really brief. So European culture is, this culture is sustained through lies. So expect them. Like, just always expect to be lied to. Expect when someone's giving you information, unless the information is going to serve them by giving it to you, you have to do your own research afterwards, because unless they have something to get out of it, there's no reason for a European to give you any valid information. So expect lies, expect to have to jump through hoops to get things done. They tell you they're going to give you money, just check. Why are you giving me money? How are you going to give me money? And when you're going to give me money? Just ask all the questions that you can, And there's some religious notes that I have here. I'll get to that when we get to the Christian stuff. But I had a prophetic download of information from the source. I feel inclined to share with you guys that later. But yeah, expect lies, y'all. Expect non-truths from Europeans. It may save your life one day.
So that brings us to Christianity and the Christian ethic. And I had this part highlighted on 318. It says, as European nationalism and the European of Tamarojo were both dependent on and directed toward others, people, places, cultures to be controlled, to have power over. So the Christian statement was a mandate for archaic Europe control. And propaganda was addressed to the objects of that control as well. No matter how subtly and ingenuously this function was performed, the fact remains that what is usually referred to as the Christian ethic, universal love, brotherhood, and peace, the meek shall inherit the earth, turn the other cheek, love thine enemy, once officially recognized by the state, was not designed for the assimilation or moral guidance of the Europeans. And I wrote that, I highlight that part because at that time, it became very clear to me that this Christian ethic that she's talking about was never created, right, for Europeans. Europeans were never supposed to follow that. That has nothing to do with them. And this Christian ethic was only created to enslave people, to enslave the non-white population. I had, another non-white victim the other day, say the meek shall inherit the earth. He actually said that out loud while I was saying it. And, I get offended, that offended me when he said that, because
we have to wait to be given it by the white people who are, dominating us. I think when we were talking about the hypocrisy, we did talk about, or concrete, that this is normalized behavior. And this society is perfectly okay to be a hypocrite loser. It's perfectly okay for everyone to be this and then be able to live a life of not being called out for it or being critiqued or made to change or whatever. Normalize hypocrisy, normalize madness, white supremacy 101.
And it's not even perfectly okay. It's encouraged, and it's how you become successful.
Yeah, even think about it, really. Think about ancient Europe and the creation of Christianity. Think about, has anybody ever turned the other cheek? Have any armies, that went out to conquer ever turned the other cheek? They were just attacked and they turned the other cheek. It makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah,
where does that come from?
I've only seen people would turn the cheeks when there's black people being attacked during civil rights by the cops. That's when we turn the cheek the most, and when it's black bodies being brutalized by the system.
That's funny because it seems like the only time I've ever heard, turn the other cheek or shit like this is from black people. I've never heard or a white person telling black people to do that, right? Like a pastor. I've never ever heard, white people tell other white people to do shit like that. Turn the other cheek and the meek shall inherit the earth. They don't talk to each other like that,
Yeah, they were just saying that the other day when the whole protests were happening. How many white people were quoting MLK or so saying don't burn buildings or something
Exactly. They're telling other black people that,
Yeah.
They're telling other white people that,
But it's a white mentality to to definitely go kill someone's entire family and say it's nothing personal, just business, you know. But they expect other people to turn the other cheek and not seek revenge. But revenge is what they make movies about, what they idolize, what they glorify is getting revenge on your enemies and the people who do you harm. Even coming back from the dead just to get revenge on the people who harm you is something they idolize and worship in this white supremacy system. But yet, the victims of them getting revenge, getting justice. Oh no, what? No. So hypocrisy, madness, white supremacy, 101.
All right, so that beautifully segues into what I had. So I was reading a bit that Kwaku was reading, and then I saw all these visions in my mind. I told Mary about it. So Jesus Christ, Yeshua, whatever you want to call this person was a Black person that had, divine powers. I wrote super Negro in my notes.
Magical.
Yeah, but he was a magical person. He was traveling the world telling, other, non-white people, hey, these Europeans are kind of taking over the world. We have all these gifts, these magical powers. I'm going to show you how to do what I do. We can be ready for combat, blah, blah, blah. And the Romans were like, oh my God, this guy is using powers in public. He's showing Black people how powerful they are, blah, blah, blah. He's doing all these things. We got to stop that. But before we kill him, let's make a thing about it. Let's make a ritual of it. Let's make this our thing. Let's make this sacrifice our thing. So the Romans killed this man, sacrificed him, and obviously we have Christianity now. But I feel like that is somewhat that happened. It's really like the teaching of Yeshua are hidden, but I read some of them, and he was talking about Europeans being evil, and he was telling Black people that you can do everything I do. You can, levitate. You can make food out of wine, blah blah blah, yada yada. But yeah, so I got that download by reading that part. Did anyone else get any types of
when you got that download, the first thought that had come into my mind, I don't know how many people here have seen Spartacus, but they made examples of them as well. Once the slaves had freed themselves and went around killing slave masters and getting more slaves and rallying up and multiplying, the Romans made example out of the leaders of these. It was a film, but it was a TV show, but it was based on real life, so you can pick from it the sense in it, because Phoenicians were people that existed. The Marmaduke tribes were a warrior tribe that literally were living on the outskirts of Egypt. So we know that these were Black, non-white people that actually did exist. So, and then the examples that they made of the Romans made of them when they caught them was to crucify them. And that just let me understand anybody that doesn't fit the European necessarily, anybody who plays the hero, shows people a different way of life, or tries to free them from that mentality, is made an example of. They're crucified and shown to be the savior model of Jesus Christ, which is to turn the other cheek and all that statement and all those statements. And even when I heard the statement, the meek shall inherit the earth, I remember the first time I heard it, I thought it was more so on like a personality basis of like, and for me, meek, when I heard the word meek, geek and meek were like similar to me. And as I thought myself as a geek, I was like, oh, so this means in the future, we will inherit the earth, like the quiet ones will inherit the earth. And then growing up and understanding now more of the European and Sealy, when they mean meek in being, as in being feeble, and that inferiority complex that they're constantly trying to disprove and project superiority is the perfect example of them actually seeing themselves as meek and then coming to inherit the earth. So now I don't like that, but biblical term.
I just want to add, I think it's very illogical to believe that the weak will inherit anything but like a kick to the face or like death upon, what is it? Upon contact.
Death on contact.
Yeah, I don't think the meek will inherit the earth. The earth is going to be, if things continue to go down, earth will be inherited by white people or a bunch of dead bodies. All right. So, like that's what I believe. If we stay on this course of white supremacy not being addressed, acknowledged, and dealt with effectively, Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you clarify what you said in the chat, Sarah?
Oh,
about mushrooms?
yeah. I think also like a lot of literature, it's been referenced the rich, like the meek will inherit the earth, and it's like I know some poets and like different it's supposed to be like even though like I appreciate what everyone has been sharing, and so that's like kind of altering my point of view, but I've heard it more as like this hopeful view, like we will have power one day, like people who have been previously marginalized. So but it's like supposed to be a reference to like mushrooms and like fungi that are actually like really incredible, and I recommend everyone learn more about them. They're really beautiful. But like in some post-nuclear war type setting where like humans just kill themselves and everyone's dead, the mushrooms would like the mushrooms would like thrive and like still like eat off of all like the dead plants and the animals and people. So like that's supposed to be like, you know, eventually when, you know, X group who has been in power like destroy themselves, the other people who've been kind of like in the background, back burner will like thrive. So, but that's just like, yeah, some poetic context, and it's like reference in songs and stuff.
Yeah, but to decode it effectively, it's definitely like meek being feeble being the victims of white supremacy, inheritance being given to transform. I mean, like given to, passed down by who? Passed down by who? The people who have it now, which are the people in power, white supremacists. So it can be decoded in a lot of ways, but I think in this context, and also it comes from the Bible. So in this context, it's definitely talking about non-white people having the fortune of inheriting the earth, and white people give it to them when they fly off to Mars and the moon. Yeah.
So on that topic, you know, the meek, you know, so we have, you know, white supremacists, Europeans telling, you know, non-white people of the world, you know, stupid shit like that, you know, the meek shall inherit the earth, turn the other cheek. So I really like this quote at the bottom of 318 to 319. It's honestly very long, so I'll try to read parts of it. So it talks about how the Christian statement says that religion should be universal. Talks about how, but what is most important here is that the Christian ideology pronounced as virtuous those very modes of behavior that mobilize a culture politically, render its members susceptible to European control and less able to resist. The pursuit of peace, the love of one's enemy, which concretely implies the betrayal of oneself, the brotherhood of man, an abstraction that concretely manifests itself as the denial of one's culture and therefore one's ideology and commitment. All of these elements combine to form the ideal psychocultural counterpart to political subjugation. And I said I wasn't going to read the whole thing, but I'm just continue. And it succeeded in doing the job that it was culturally designed to do. It did not affect the overwhelming historical pattern of European behavior, which is characterized by antithetical tendencies to those mentioned above. The growth of the empire was not impeded by passivity and love. Rather, it thrived on the intensely aggressive and hostile behavior that the silly of the culture encouraged. I'll skip that. Whatever. Oh yeah. So I wrote down that it all makes sense now. Europeans use deceit, so they use words and stupid shit like, you know, the turn the other cheek, you know, the meek shall inherit the earth, or, you know, false promises of paradise, you know, work with us, we can create a paradise on earth. I'm sure somebody said something like that. And then claimed universalism, you know, the brotherhood, and, you know, love your brother, so that we would lower our guard, right? Yeah, so they promise us things like that to lower our guard using the Christian ethic. I forget where my thoughts were going with that, but, you know, a great example of how, you know, I truly understand now how the European did everything. They used words of deceit, and because she said this is only, you know, a phenomenon to the European where words mean so little. They used words to deceive everybody and claimed universalism, you know, like we can be your brother, so that we would lower our guard. Yeah, so that was I really enjoyed that statement or that paragraph. I don't know if anybody cares to share about how they felt about that, or if they have a similar realization.
Oh, well, yeah, I just think what you said was very well said, and yeah, I think you hit the hammer on the nail when you said, like, once you understand how the Europeans use words, we're able to understand how they went about doing most of what they've done on planet Earth.
Yeah, especially stuff, you know, like brotherhood, peace, love. I'm sure, you know, the natives, the non-white people at that time were very, you know, easily fooled, unfortunately, because they never, you know, they weren't prepared. They never encountered something like that, you know, people just saying things and not meaning them, you know.
And it was like things they actually practiced, like brotherhood, love, like those were things that were actually significant in their culture. So when they see Europeans saying that, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. We do that too. But it was just words for them. I thought it was interesting too in terms of like the family unit, like the hypocrisy in that, like Christians always talk about like multiply, like be fruitful and multiply and like have all these children, and like almost like the like even how politicians, like right-wing politicians, always base everything in we need to protect families, and when they mean families we mean like white people, etc. But like it's not about protecting the Christian family because of Christian values. It's literally just about like protecting the family because you want to produce more white people and you want more white people on the planet. You know what I mean? And like I just think that's really interesting, because I think even white, like especially white rich families, they don't see their families the way Black people see their families. Like I feel like they see their families as like investment in capital, and like that's why, like, you know, they treat like their parents so horribly, etc. And then they'll still, you know, get a house at the end of the day or something like that. Like they'll still get all of these inheritances because it's not about like, oh, how you treat me. It's just about like, I'm investing in this, you know. And I thought that was interesting, like that type of hypocrisy.
Yeah. And what you and Kwaku says reminds me of just like how they use words in regards to love and peace. Love to white people just means openly being able to fornicate with whoever they want to, like without any repercussions. Peace to them is not being bothered by non-white people or by other white people, and then being able to do whatever weird things they want to do, and so-called peace or freedom,
and not have to work for anything, having to have all those people do all the work and labor.
Having labor come from other energies outside from themselves. So they don't want to work. They want to be able to fornicate and do whatever they want freely without criticism. And this is like what we have to understand when looking at white people use their words, because peace to a melanated person, a person with color in their body, should be like peace for everyone. No violence, no chaos. But that's not what a white person can equate peace to. You know, no violence, no chaos. Peace is just like, you know, maybe solving a small environmental problem, but not actually having total harmony on the planet. They can't even fathom that. So this is what we're dealing with.
That's interesting. I'm now going to ask whatever white person I'm around. Yeah, like, what is peace to you? Yeah. What do you see as peace? I wonder what they're gonna say.
Yeah. What does peace love? What does peace mean, and what does love mean to you?
Yeah, freedom. Yeah. Peace, love, and freedom. What are these things?
What I've been practicing is, because we all have our own definitions for words, I'll just ask people, what does that mean to you? What does this word mean to you?
That's good. That's good.
Because quote of the day, use your words.
Yeah, when Ashley was talking, what came to my mind was the corporations and how they, the more like higher up you get in the corporation, the less work you have to do and the more responsibility you have to delegate work so you just have people under you now, but you do less work in a day, like the higher up bands you get in the corporation, and that just literally expresses their ceiling.
Yeah, that is like one of the biggest hypocrisies in America, that, or like in like white societies in general, that unfortunately a lot of like Black people also feed to like their children, is work hard and you will like get somewhere in life. You maybe one day you can be the manager. And it's like the manager is sometimes, is like how Kanye West says, you know, it's the boss's niece. Like it's not, there's no meritocracy. Like you don't earn any of these things, you know. And if you do, you're not working, you're just better at manipulating. So yeah. I also think like what I was saying about the family, the context I was trying to say is like, especially like Republicans and stuff, they like to talk about abortion in terms of like Christianity, and it's like based in this idea of like religion and stuff and not killing the baby, but it's totally not about that, right? It's just like about producing more white people, producing workers, producing capital. And I think that was what like that's the hypocrisy that the Christian veil gives.
That's a beautiful example to give, because the same Christian nation will put Planned Parenthoods in Black and brown neighborhoods, the majority.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the how she mentions how Europeans have developed an entire on 320. Europeans have developed an entire semantical system designed for export for the purposes of nationalistic propaganda, for appearance for others, like advertising. And then she says too that the fact that some individuals may have begun to incorporate the image that has been projected of them does not alter the cultural significance of that image. I don't know what that last part meant, but for me, I understood that as, you know, there's, you know, American corporations use advertising to create this image of people, or this image that you're supposed to be. And people have now started to believe that image and started to incorporate it into their image, right, of themselves. And when, so I see that as like, you know, kind of creating slavery, you know, like creating slaves. Ashley mentioned, you know, the families, you know, teaching their kids to work hard. And that's what I think of, you know, that there's this image that if you work hard and you know, just work hard, you know, it doesn't matter if you're Black and that everybody hates you, just work hard, you'll be able to accomplish anything, because that's what America tells everybody, right? That's what the Western world is telling all of its slaves, is that if you work hard, you know, if you're a good Christian, you know, you'll achieve things. Yeah, I wanted to add that part. Did anybody find that, you know, the purposes of nationalistic propaganda? You know, what did anybody think about that? Very abstract, you know.
Yeah, when I read that, it reminded me of just the infatuation that like non-white countries have with European culture and American culture. Like if you go to India and tell someone you're from America, they're like, "Oh, you're from America, super cool. I'm in London." Well, people think the fact that I'm from America is so cool. People think that American culture is so cool, and America has done such a great job at deceiving the world. You know, people think America is so awesome. They think America is just one giant movie, and it's not true at all. America is definitely not what it projects itself to be. America is a very organized business where Black people are the products and the stocks, you know, most high value subjects, you know, and you can tell they're the most high value because they're the most targeted and the most, you know, the most killed and the most toyed with by white supremacy.
Yeah, I wanted to add to what you were saying, because at the bottom of that paragraph, right before the last paragraph, I have it highlighted that it says, but this is not the primary function of the rhetorical ethic. It is primarily designed for export. So for me, that says, like you were saying, you go to these foreign places and you tell people you're from America. People have this image of America because that's the image that America is, presenting to the world, that it's this magical movie place, right? Everyone kind of lives like it's Hollywood around here. Everybody doesn't actually know what it's like here. Everybody just assumes everything's, what they see on TV and what's being presented to them. I thought that was, that the rhetorical ethic, the idea that you say things and you don't mean them is what is its primary function is to go out to the world, right? For other people to see and for other people to believe. I found that to be very problematic, because I have, family members that, think this is like a golden country. They want to come here and they think it's going to be roses and, daisies. Like everybody, like it's not warfare over here. Crazy.
That's so true. Mm-hmm. My cousins can't wait to come over from Sierra Leone to like the UK and like Greece, and the first thing that they complain about is the cold. Like, mm-hmm. They didn't mention like it wasn't mentioned. Like it's part of the advertising, but like until they experience it, like wait, hold on, this is not. It's not, streets aren't golden. It's not paved in gold. Like even mm-hmm. the way that they sold it to the Jamaicans when them being British colonized for like ever since the grounds of the civilization was established through slavery in Jamaica. Their number one mentality was told that England is their mother country, and when they come here, they're going to like get the most amazing opportunities. They'll be part of like a beautiful function. They'll be in line with the Queen. Like the Queen, you can see the Queen's mansion from across your house. And like I listened to lots of podcasts that talked about from like firsthand experiences of that generation that had come in, and a lot of things that they were saying. And these were like recorded in like the 80s and between the 70s and 80s. And a lot of them were saying that they came and cleaned up the environment. There was smoke and fog, like due to the industrial revolution that they had. Like there was crab. They had to deal with like lice, mice, and like they kind of cleaned it up and exterminated it in a sense to make it livable for themselves. And then now those areas are so expensive to live in. The ones that they had first gone in, and gentrification has done its job, and then now they've moved them to like a more impoverished area. And that's what the pattern of that England keeps doing. They're selling people these dreams. They come and they make something out of it, and then they basically invade in further. They move in from the outskirts, make the areas expensive, so they have to move out, and then make those areas more livable and by the Black people who are now moving into these dead energetic areas. So yeah, it's a terrible game that's being played.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's how the same thing happened in New York. Central Park is like it was used to be called Seneca Falls. That was a Black neighborhood. Yeah. And like they basically just displaced like all those people to make Central Park, which is like this huge tourist place in New York. There's actually an episode of Hey Arnold where they show like, I don't know if you ever want to explain gentrification. There's an episode of Hey Arnold where they talk about gentrification, but I'll talk about it in a different meaning. But like if you ever want to explain it to like someone who's younger, it's really interesting.
That's amazing. That's cool. I love Hey Arnold so much, and I don't.
But I wanted to see if we even had something that's before 328.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is part of 321 is a good representation of people who like look for a good inside white culture or white supremacy, who they try to find any saving grace or any reason to keep the system or any reason to praise the system. This is what they will often run into, and this is a good example, I believe. So she says, Kierkegaard represents the epitome of the individual who seems to be searching desperately in the culture for something that it has never meant to contain. He does not understand the Sealy. Kierkegaard's accusation is that the Christianity of the New Testament no longer exists, but in my view, it has never existed. So we have this white person looking for like, the gone era of the New Testament, where I guess he feels was like a good period or like noble Christianity. But Christianity has always been used to eradicate non-white people and divide and conquer. So historically, there's nothing good in white culture, European culture, and there's no reason to try to save this or find any good in it. Just understand it and replace it with a system of justice.
Yeah, for me, I had the part above it highlighted, but I understand. For me, that looks like liberal today. Confused Christian just seems like a liberal. It doesn't really, we have these liberal people that walk around and say these really nice things and say these things can be done and accomplished, but they're confused because in the system of racism and white supremacy, those things will never happen. Black people will never receive justice, and etc. So I see this like these good Christians, as a modern day liberal. We want to add that part. Talking about the great old America, like great for who?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The modern day liberal being having that missionary mentality, like, oh, I'm here for peace. I'm here to bring schools. I'm here to bring education. I want better for you, but in the whole sense, literally destroying the mindset of the culture that continues unity. Like I feel like the further you go into Christianity or the European asili, or like let's say you assimilate and come over here and you lose your culture, you're more likely to find yourself in your later age in a nursing home. Like there was like one Indian woman that it's not off track, it's off track, but it's for a good reason because of what you said inspired me to remember. And I forced the radio on and put it on like an Asian radio station, and she was like very English. She didn't have nobody coming to visit her. She didn't have people like in the system. And I thought to myself, like, the only reason why you're probably here is because your family came here. You're Christian now. You don't speak to your family members, and you're surrounded by white people in a retiring home. Whereas if you kept your Indian culture, you'd be back home with another 30 people who look just like you.
Yeah.
I wanted to share that.
Does anyone have anything else before 328? Love, you said you had something?
Yeah, I'll go straight to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so,
I just wanted to, 323, bring up the humanitarian image. So she says, the Rockefellers do, the very traits of capitalism and European culture that she values are perpetuated, not hampered by the claims of dishonest humanitarians. The Rockefellers do all they can to create a humanitarian image of themselves for public consumption. All of the most successful capitalists are also Europe's greatest humanitarians. It's precisely those characteristics that Ayn Rand considers virtuous that have survived in European culture. This should be an indication that capitalism most certainly does have a strong moral base in the United States, and there is no function. So I want to talk about, the humanitarian image. So that image of like people helping. So capitalism is exploiting the world and exploiting these people. And then these people who are the most successful capitalists are, which means they're the most successful at exploiting, non-white people, are then, called humanitarians. I I would need to look up the definition of a humanitarian, but from my understanding, it's somebody that does like great things for humanity. So very confusing, right? To label a capitalist as a humanitarian. And, you know, it's like these people are covering up their own tracks. Once again, you know, fooling the public into thinking that these are good people, right? Rhetorical ethic, once again. That, you know, these people are, you know, yeah, so just wanted to add that. You know, I thought that was very interesting. Yeah, I now understand, you know, the goals of humanitarians.
Yeah, I agree, especially in the context of like the philanthropist and how people excuse billionaires because they donate. And it's like, but why does this one person decide who gets money and who's more important than others? Like, just the context of that is it's very scary, honestly. And I think that the hypocrisy it is right there, but it's very interesting how people fall for it. I don't understand how just because someone's giving and in and of itself, charity is not helping people, it's making them more dependent on you. So like what, yeah.
Bill Gates is a perfect example of a philanthropist humanitarian going around in their own capitalistic nature doing things that are literally of the death of Black people. So that's a, yeah. Bill Gates came to mind when you was expressing yourself. Thank you.
Yeah. On 323, I want to read this. She said the doctrines that they developed supported the competitive, individualistic, aggressive, rationalistic, non-spiritual, and detached behavior necessary for survival within the culture. So this is like, you know, what we can expect from the institutions, doctrines, laws, and people who practice white supremacy and victims of them who are confused by the system. Everything that I just mentioned, all those traits. So I think it's really important.
What that reminds me of, when you say doctrines, reminds me of the countless treaties that Europeans, Euro-Americans have broken. Like there's all the Native American treaties that were broken. There was the treaty between Mexico and America that was broken. So like their doctrines hold very little weight. If it stops their plan of expansion, of domination, of control, they have no problem, you know, deciding that the doctrine no longer is valid.
Yeah, damn, I forget. I wanted to add something if I can remember it real quick. Oh, I wanted to comment and add like how, again, going back to like the capitalism and humanitarians, how like white supremacy creates these situations and these environments, right? They created the situation of capitalism in order to create something like humanitarianism, which in reality is just going back to their pockets, right? Like, I mean, I think about a lot of humanitarians, you know, donating to things like the Clinton Foundation, you know, and like that seems ultimately like counterproductive and just anti-Black and racist as hell.
Yeah, like just that image. She mentions how like these images of like all these rich white people like going to help all these non-white people, helping to support white supremacy, because just an image in itself of a white person coming to help all these poor non-whites who couldn't help themselves for whatever reason, and that manifests in like, you know, all these millionaires or billionaires so-called donating all of their monies, but we've learned that they use donations to make even more money because those donations are like little investments in some capacity.
Not just that, they're tax write-offs too.
Yeah, exactly. So like there's really no such thing as like philanthropy work or like humanitarian work. It's all supporting racism and white supremacy, as far as I'm concerned. especially when it involves white people and non-white people interacting with each other. Definitely white supremacy.
Yeah. On 327, I had this, bottom of 326 and top of 327, I have this like I just put a sticky note on it because I brought it to attention, but I'm just gonna read like one part of it that I really liked and really just kind of summed it up for me, and it's just right on point. It says the strategy is simple: by verbally disavowing white nationalism, Europeans are thereby able to avoid dealing with it. They cannot confront it because intuitively they know what they would never admit. That is an inherent part of their cultural heritage. But more so the first part, that takes me back to, the signs, the Black Lives Matter signs, just put it out there, say, I don't believe in it, and therefore we don't have to do anything to deal with it, right? That's what we see people going around doing. They even on most now, frequently we see non-white people saying, I don't believe in it, White nationalism is racism, so. People going around saying they don't believe in racism, I don't believe in racism, therefore I guess it just stops there, right? We don't have to deal with it. I see a lot of that going on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, what I see a lot is, I think now that people are at least more educated about what happened in the past in terms of white supremacy, the white supremacists and like white liberals, they just acknowledge it and then that's it. It's like, we did that, but then there's nothing about like,
we apologize.
Yeah, reparations, or even just like we did all of this, but still vote for Joe Biden. And it's like, wait, what? Like, how you're acknowledging that it happened in the past and like wanting for us to contribute to it continuing into the future. It's very interesting. Like, I think that's like the new thing. Like, I was thinking about how like talking about the police as like, white supremacists as like almost like race soldiers is almost like pretty like common discourse now amongst most people. Like, most people will accept that as discourse, but the actual solution to it, nobody will accept that as discourse, right? It's like nobody will want to have the conversation about, okay, yeah, that's happening, so what do we do about it? Yeah, it's just like let's just talk about it, but not actually like talk about the possible solutions, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah.
So I wanted to comment real quick. I like how Ashley brought up Joe Biden, because that was, for me, is like the perfect example, right? This racist. He's not even a suspect at this point. He is a white supremacist. This white supremacist doing all the terrible things he did. Him just saying, my bad. And then that's it. And then black people are still voting for him. So.
Yeah. I want to read this. Yeah, go Trey.
Yeah, I want to just look. Do you have anything you want to read before?
Are you reading 324 or before that?
328.
Yeah, I'd love to read something from 324. Okay, but yeah.
No.
Okay. It's a part where they talk about Christianity and sympathy, and it's one to do with Nishi's quote. It just sparked a lot of ideas in my mind when I had read that, so I just wanted to share that part. Nishi makes the point that Jesus dying for others is the epitome of the negative political image, and amazingly astute observation, but he fails to make the connection between Europeans' overwhelming political success and its complete rejection of this image. Nishi's fears are unfolded. The rhetorical ethic does not affect the European. What is interesting in the thoughts of Spengler and Nishi and even Rand is the lack of hypocrisy that I am considering here is the theme in the European culture. They apparently reject the European rhetorical ethic. That is, they refuse to make the Christian ethic a part of their own rhetoric. Often theorists of the right in the West are more honest in their denial of the professed values of the Christian ethic than are the European liberals in their verbal support. all too often this is only distinguishing feature between them. Like it made me think about people who do call out Europeans, and like as long as you're calling out like Swa had done a post the other day about I can't remember their names.
Feminism, is it feminism one?
Yes, the feminism post. I don't remember the name of the white feminist, but
Gloria, is it that Gloria? Yeah, the CIA agent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That whole concept of as soon as there's a movement or something is going, they will ignore the passionate people. They'll ignore the people who would say something to make a change or kill them, like Fred Hampton. But people like that woman will be glorified because she's there to infiltrate, to act like she cares or gives a statement, makes a comment on it throughout time, but that's it. It's complacent in that sense. And it got me thinking about the fact that these philosophers or people who commented on it through time, the fact that we know about them, is it because they only they didn't touch on everything? It was just like brief comments, like something that maybe Freud may have done, like talk about it in context, but talk around the issue, as opposed to directly call it white supremacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like not truly reveal itself. Like I feel like they will support people who tell them off a little bit, but you have to mislead and for the rest of it can't incite like a real movement. It could just make people feel like some form of satisfaction that there's somebody talking out against the issue.
Yep. And I think on page 326, by reading this, we will understand why that is. And she says, white supremacy is characteristic of European culture, not exceptional or aberrant. So it's just white supremacy is European culture. Is what that means. And she says from 327, to eradicate white supremacist ideology from the institutionalization of the culture will imply radically changing themselves and what it means to be European. It would imply a different biocultural being. And I think historically, because white people have proven to be so lazy and not being able to do work for themselves, be like case in point, slavery, and also right now still benefiting off non-white people and their labor. So I think white people are too lazy to do the work that is necessary to change their hostility. But I could be incorrect, but I think history and logic says that I am probably onto something here.
Yeah. So on page 328, I thought this was really, to me, is important. I want to share. It says, one result of this characteristic of the culture is a tendency to make philosophers the most irrelevant of people and to effectively divorce their work from any decision-making capacity or role that in any way influences the ethical behavior of European peoples. What this tradition has done instead is to support the culture and its ability to use words without meanings and to support Europeans in their quest to deceive others and themselves as well. The body of literature known as ethical theory has a large degree been conducive to the growth of moral hypocrisy in European cultures. Mm-hmm. So to me, this is what we've been talking about the whole time, is that deceit and that literally speaking a lot of words that mean absolutely nothing. And I do believe that this is something that is unchangeable. I don't think you can change nature. And if you do change nature, then you're like retarding it or mutating it. So for example, let's say you take a tree and trees grow up, right? The brown bark with green leaves on it. If you were to change that, you'd be changing nature, and it's in white people's DNA to see something different and categorize it as a threat, you know, because themselves are the threat. You know, I feel like the European Asili is a weapon of some sort, and it's like a challenge of some sort. It's a manifestation of conflict, and it's so interesting how Europeans move so deceitfully and evilly, but they're not being called out 24/7, 5 days a week. You know, I mean, yeah, it's not. It's very bizarre how this is not the focal point of every talking conversation. You know, my whole life is governed by a group of people who've proven to be, you know, killers, liars, and thieves. You know, and when I say that, I mean Europeans and white people.
Ghost them for your health.
And but yeah. There's also something on 331 I wanted to get read.
I agree with that statement. They literally are all encompassing authority, yet the savagery is literally the DNA function, but yet we're constantly being told to naturally work off our natural function of being lazy or wanting to steal.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
And to me, it's something about it that it could. He's not sure if this can be adjusted or changed. On page 331, we get some insight on that. Our conclusion is that the European tradition must be shattered. The new ethos is to replace the old. This means a new Utamaroho to fulfill a different Asili, but then centered in African interests. I understand European culture to be identified with anti-Africanism, the imperialistic pursuit with a denial of the human spirit, whereas Cantor finds this identification pernicious and makes the claim that the liberation of the human spirit has been a central current in the Western tradition. Ultimately, Cantor's objectives are chauvinistic. He is concerned with influencing students in such a way that they will act to maintain the peace and order necessary to continuance of the European conception of progress, i.e. the persistence of European power, just white supremacy and racism. So I read this because to be European is to be anti-nature, anti-African, anti-everything basically. And when you are supposedly in camaraderie, or if you are supposed to be in some type of solidarity, in the back of your mind, you have to be aware that I could betray this person at any moment, and I should betray this person at any moment. That's why I think Europeans exist. You know, I'll help you, but it's in my nature to betray you eventually. You know.
It's in the very term ally as well.
Ally. Like, I'll be with you temporarily. And I don't know, I feel like that's one of the reasons why like Bill Cosby is in prison, but not Harvey Weinstein. You know, Harvey Weinstein is white. Yeah, he can lie all he wants. He's not going to be touched. Bill Cosby can't really lie.
Harvey isn't.
Yeah, he's in prison.
Oh, never mind.
Larry King isn't though, and I interviewed Bill Cosby and him talking about drugging women. They're like, "Oh, you remember that?" But only one of them's in prison.
I mean, I agree.
Yeah, but Bill Cosby's been in prison way longer, so
I wanted to add too, because Trey brought up a good point. You know, a good part about the anti-Africanism. And a little bit earlier, you know, it seems like these ethical theorists have found a way to justify being anti-African by, there's this statement on 329 that says the result of their theories, however, is that they succeed in making the European responsible for everything, the good as well as the bad. And in the end, the good far outweighs the bad and will, of course, triumph along with reason. So now throughout history, and kind of how, you know, I mean, you kind of see this all the time, is that, you know, people justifying, you know, the horrible and atrocious things Europeans have done throughout history, oh, but we have cars, we have all these things, all these little trinkets, right? And those things couldn't have happened unless those atrocities happened. And them using that kind of justification and that logic and that reasoning to justify it. So being anti-African, being anti-nature, going around doing those terrible and horrible things and saying, oh, those are necessary, right? Having something like a necessary evil, Yeah,
I mean, I totally agree. And on page 333.
Wait. One quick comment from Kwaku. I would suspect that white people are the necessary evil on planet Earth. Perhaps that manifestation entirely.
Why are they necessary?
As the creator, I can ask the creator, man. I don't know. I have the answer for that.
I don't like that creator.
But Trey,
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is the most important thing about European culture. If you take this information, it will save your life one day, And keep in mind, this applies to all 9 areas of people activity: politics, economics, religion, education, entertainment, war, and I'm missing 3, but it's on page 333. And to me, when I read this, I was like, "That's it. This is very true. This is very simple, easy to understand." And she says, "There is nothing in the European belief system that supports action on behalf of others. It is absurd to describe altruism as a major value or central current in European ideology. As Williams and Cantors have done, rather the claim to ideals of altruism and universal brotherhood of man must be recognized in terms of their crucial propagandistic value. There is no more politically cunning and self-interesting being than a European." Like that's a myth. Like, I'm gonna help you as a myth. I personally believe that all charity organizations are like double-sided, meaning that they foster the thing that they're trying to cure. For example, like you're trying to end AIDS in Africa, they probably have some research lab somewhere in Africa giving kids AIDS. That's what I think, because there's nothing too bizarre in the white supremacy complex. People in UNICEF who are supposedly, fighting diseases, probably spreading diseases, and we find truth in this when we think about the Haiti Foundation, how it was discovered that millions of dollars were stolen and given to Haiti. Like oil, it was discovered that millions were given and only a handful of houses were built, if any were built at all. And also it was discovered that one of the organizers of the Haiti Relief Foundation was smuggling Haitian children to America to be sodomized, raped, and victimized by white supremacists. So I'm not just making these things up. It's very true that altruism often comes with some type of violence from the hands of white supremacists.
I totally agree, Trey. Yeah. Also the UN peacekeepers have been known in whatever countries they go to rape the men, women, and children there. So it's very common.
That was my last thing that I had for my notes.
Make a quick comment about 329. She's quoting a white person, and he says, "The new ethos had indigenous roots and some Central currents of the Western tradition. In Christian mysticism, Enlightenment's vision of a happy and peaceful world. So I just thought I was going to stop there. Like, this is like just a total fantasy that some white people are forced to participate in if they don't want to look at reality. Or perhaps I'm wrong and they can't look at the same reality I am able to perceive. One being a world full of suffering and deceit and lies, curated by people who classify themselves as white, who I like to call racist suspects. So
yeah, and it's completely like it's whatever like feelings they have or like this ethos they have is completely superficial. It's not based in actual understanding of these indigenous cultures. That's literally why all these people from the 60s became like boomers who work in tech and stuff and own a bunch of property and are like the reasons why a lot of wealth is not distributed to people in our generation. Like, so none of that stuff, all of it was a surface level escape, you know, that they can talk about fondly, you know.
Yeah, and it's like this fantasy. Like I literally got just on 329, it's just so much nonsense that this white person is spewing, and it's just fantasy. It's just like the fantasy that white supremacy forces everyone to live into. A fantasy of a nonsense of lies and of truly like I don't know, it's just nonsense and it's really bothersome.
And it's so interesting how he uses like Freud as like an example of people freeing themselves when like Freud has been used to like further push people into like consumerism and like subliminal messaging and things like that. So it's like, so I don't know if he's confused or trying to confuse people with what he's saying.
As well as giving a useful perversion as well.
Yeah.
I have just two more things I wanted to share from this chapter. I liked on 331 where the second paragraph, where she says, through continual efforts to deceive others by means of the construction of elaborate rhetorical systems, a small proportion of the culture has no doubt succeeded in deceiving itself. This is precisely the same dynamic that often occurs within the European entertainment milieu. A bizarre image of a performer is projected by the media and her public relations machine in order to make her and to sustain her as a star. Though the image is radically different from her true nature, she becomes a victim of her own propaganda and of the power of the media and begins to believe that she is what she sees on the screen. The example is appropriate because it allows us to see that even this kind of self-deception must be carefully distinguished from a functional ideal or value. But I guess that kind of talks about what we were talking about earlier and that image and how people actually are. So I like the part where she said a small proportion of the culture has no doubt succeeded in deceiving itself. That just makes me think, I don't even think that's a small proportion. If she's talking about us, I'm thinking that she's talking about how non-white people have deceived themselves into believing, everything that white people say. So, I don't think that was, I don't know if that's what she meant, but I don't think that's a small proportion. I think that's a very large amount of people in the culture that have deceived themselves,
Yeah, I also highlighted that. And I think like a good example of social media, how like we all like can convince ourselves that like we are like our social media personas. But a good example of this bizarre image of a performer like becoming the tragic star she mentions is like K-pop. K-pop is just like a well machined oil that produces these so-called stars who are all like light skinned, have the same like look basically, and all function to provide a service of like selling the masses pretty colors and nonsense. Mm-hmm. And I see K-pop as really damaging to the psyche because most things white supremacy gives us is damaging to the psyche.
The slave labor too.
Yeah, and also a good example of slave labor. But K-pop is a great example of what she mentions here.
Yeah. I wanted to comment too, because I know somebody, right? You brought up social media. And, you know, we have these content creators, right? People that want to be content creators. And it's kind of interesting how you can see how like the image that they're creating, how it is actually like taking over their lives and the self, because you see them kind of acting in real life the same way that they would act on social media. You know, TikTok is becoming very famous, you know, and you know, these social media or whatever you want to call them, content creators, they have to act a certain way on there, right, to get their following. And so, you know, interacting with somebody who you knew before they like started to be taken over by this image, you know, I would describe this person, you know, as they were very, you know, they almost seem goofy now, you know, like aloof. They like the way that they act is just very like not serious. Everything's kind of like a game, because you know TikTok is not as a very like unconstructive and not serious place. Social media is an unconstructive and not serious place. So people think that now by acting like that, because people like them on social media, right? They like that image. So now people think like, oh, if I act like that in real life, people will like me, you know. But that's far from the truth. I personally actually hate people that act like that. You know, I can't stand people that act like everybody, every famous person or every one of those content creators, you know, famous ones. I would never hang out in real life. Yeah. You know?
I think we should normalize calling those people nonsense creators, because that's what they're selling to the children, nonsense, I believe.
Yeah. I just saw it's so interesting that you're bringing up TikTok. I just saw an ad from TikTok, and it talked about how start 2021 with TikTok, like how it was saying this is the new norm. Posting dance videos, posting videos of people getting into fights, just posting non-constructive information. But yeah, like it was just a really intense ad, you know, with a really serious tone talking about TikTok, you know.
Yeah, and it's like I kind of urge anybody, like, you know, we want to minimize contact and conflict, but if you know somebody who's, you know, contributed to that nonsense creating, you know, kind of like, you know, just spend the hour with them, you know, and like see how they behave. Like, you know, it's very goofy, you know, just not serious. Yeah.
I actually had a friend. No, not my bad. Excuse me, using that silly word. I actually had an old associate who hit me up. She shared her YouTube with me, and just like it's nonsense. And then she sent me it, and I told her I don't believe this has any constructive value. You know, and I just being totally honest with her, like this YouTube channel, which it is totally unconstructive. But that's just an example of how we can be truthful with in all things in our life, especially when talking to former associates or people who you want to classify as friends. But I personally do not do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And also it like what you're saying about your former associate, like what they were doing is like totally using children as a way to like get more views and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're producing this world where like these children are also turning into performers. So like how does that affect your psyche as a child if you're constantly performing in front of a camera, a phone? Even when you're around the people that's like your survival unit, your so-called family that you're supposed to feel the most comfortable around. I'm very interested in how this next generation is going to grow up, knowing that they're constantly in a state of like performance. Like, are they even going to be able to distinguish reality from television or from like social media? I very well doubt it.
I suspect we will have like killers on like serial killers who are recording their acts, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we find the serial killer, we find like tapes of it, and we find them living like being connected with other groups who are in the know of what they're doing. And like, you know how we have internet cliques, we'll have serial killer cliques. But I hope I'm incorrect. I hope everyone gets serious about solving this problem and we don't have serial killer cliques. due to this system of white supremacy and TikTok and all the infinite items they add to their toolbox to further niggerize and destroy non-white people. But yeah.
Yeah, the dark web will just become the web. But like, as what was coming to mind was literally, does everybody remember when WorldStar had that like 10-minute video for like something funny, a funny meme, and then booty shaking, like just 10-minute compilations, and people literally like used to crowd around and watch it. It was like a thing to watch the Vine compilation of, which literally showed the mentality of booty shaking, girls being naked, falling down, hurting yourself, getting hit by a car. There's those three things going off round in a circle, and now this is the whole algorithm of Instagram: booty shaking, someone getting hurt, or just nonsense content, like literally. Yeah. Like if you don't filter your old content, you literally see, I don't know, food of people eating, like that being a thing. You just literally see like sick manifestations, like just coming out. You have to really do your best due diligence to filter and take your mindset out of that consumerism world. And a note that I had written based on the paragraph that Kwaku had read was the fact that it was about Bill Cosby, and the fact that in order to thrive in this society, especially if you're trying to make it to the industry or rise in social media, you have to be a hypocrite. You have to present one way and be doing another. Everything about the European intention of saying one thing and meaning another is literally their grammar. They have double entendre words that mean so many different things. So you have a sentence with European, and they'll say exactly their intention, and you only in energy you know that you've been disrespected, like literally. And yeah, so for that's what came to mind in terms of that pop star and like maintaining that. Asili, if you don't fit that function anymore, like you are dismissed. Like the way they tried to cancel Solange when she had natural hair, they tried to call her hair nappy, but then when they had no choice but to embrace it because by popular demand everybody else was embracing their natural self, they started like talking about praising it in the media like she was a pioneer. But the first thing that they tried to do to try and like change her mindset was call her hair nappy in like every magazine. Super disrespectful.
Yeah. Then she titled her album "A Seat at the Table."
Yeah, but before that, she had an album called "F the Industry" because she was tired of them trying to turn her into her sister.
Yeah. I had one more thing to read if nobody had a comment. On page 332, it says she talks about like the Europeans and like for me like the confused ones. A European acting out of a false consciousness debilitates the objects of European oppression by lessening their ability to see straight or to correctly analyze European behavior based on an understanding of the silly of the culture. A European who is deceived about who he is merely succeeds in deceiving non-Europeans. And I instantly thought about like interracial relationships and, like interracial sex. I forgot where I heard it at. It might have been in this book, a lecture somewhere, but it might have been even Neely Fuller, but talking about how, it's better to just shoot a non-white person. It'd be just better for a white person to shoot a non-white person than to have sex with them or to have a relationship with them.
Yeah, to ruin their mind forever. Yes, indeed. I do recall Neely Fuller saying that, and I totally understand the logic behind that. And
Ever.
Yeah. So yeah, to me, that's what this reminded me of, and it makes complete sense. Like it's honestly, I don't even think this is enough words to kind of describe it, but it's so many things that shouldn't be happening are happening when stuff like that is going on. And yeah, it's only negative in my opinion. But that was the last thing I wanted to share. If anybody had any comments about that.
Yeah, from 334, a very powerful, unnecessary thing to know. She says, there is no more politically cunning and self-interest being than the European. So we literally think like any mythical like creature that has the insatiable urge to, propagate itself and consume, like that, like a pig with a insatiable appetite. That can be like the embodiment of like white people. And that's what we're dealing with. And like they have an appetite for violence, destruction, controlling us, and just making a mess of this planet that the creator gave us to like, live on peacefully. And then they come out of the caves and just bring hell with them. So really grateful to be here solving the problem. I'm glad we're all able to understand like the power of words now, and how the European has been finessing us for a couple thousand years. With that being said, should we move into closing comments?
Ready to move into closing comments.
Oh, yeah, we can move on to the comments. I'm fine with that.
All right, I'll go ahead and start. For closing comments, my closing comment. This is definitely one of my favorite chapters in the book. A lot of necessary and great information in here. Dr. Ani, once again, thank you for that. I now understand, I can now use that, I know the definition, a lot of these people, the way they're acting, they operate the rhetorical ethic, right? You don't, the way you behave, you don't actually mean what you don't actually act, you don't say the things you're going to do, right? You're very confused, and you're trying to confuse me. You're trying to deceive me, right? You're going to say one thing, but you're not going to do it, right? So I'm not confused about that. I know exactly what that is now. So thank you. That's my closing comment. And Ray had to tap out early because she's feeling under the weather. I think that hike took a lot out of her.
It's okay.
She was listening though. She's trying to stay strong.
Wow, the European, man, is really clever creature. Maybe until this chapter, like I thought I was like aware of what I was dealing with, but it's just they have so many like tools at their disposal, and words. I of course knew being one that was like so important, but like this combination of words and the rhetorical ethic and just how everything has manifested, it's just really interesting and a daunting thing to deal with the European and also the people who have been trained to be mini Europeans. So we have like a bunch of hypocrites running around who don't give a fuck about anything, and very few people trying to solve this problem. So thank you for Dr.Marimba Ani for this very important piece of work, and I'm super glad that the book club is reading it because that's all.
Okay, I'll go. Yeah, I agree with Saw. It's very daunting to figure out how to interact with white people and non-white people, unfortunately. But I thought this chapter was so good because I just feel like Dr. Ani is like a genius. Like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like she just makes me now everything that I see, I not only see it so differently, but I'm able to like analyze it, contextualize it, and explain it to someone in a way that makes sense. Whereas like something I knew wasn't right, I didn't like know how to really explain it, but I just felt like this isn't right. And I just feel like she's just so smart. Like it's just like amazing to see how, I don't know. I just feel like every sentence in the book is just like really powerful, and the way that she writes is really powerful, and I'm really inspired by her. And I think for me, everything just makes a lot of sense in terms of the rhetoric, and the rhetoric being a tool for conquering domination and things like that. And And then it makes it easier to understand your own ethics, your own morality, when you no longer see what the European does as like the background, like the norm. It's actually not the norm. And looking at it from this lens makes it easier to see that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but to add to mine, what you said is that maybe you should get in the habit at everything, every bad action that you can imagine, just give that is a white thing. You know, this is something that white people, white Europeans gave the non-whites. So again, the practice of attributing everything non-just and evil to white people, and getting a habit of attributing everything just and beautiful and benevolent to non-white people who are trying to solve this problem, especially Black people.
Yeah, my concluding thoughts. I'd have to say I agree with a lot of what Ashley had said. I'm definitely in the realms with you of thinking that just basically marveling on Dr. Marimba Ani's genius and the way she's able to articulate and fit so many words in a sentence that it makes my tongue twist. But once I've learned it, I've claimed that I received that knowledge, and I'm really grateful to be able to try and break this down and conceptualize. I wouldn't say that I'm at that stage where I can fully express it in the like layman terms to people exactly what I'm experiencing, but this is helping me understand my action more better. It's helping me understand what actions to take in the work environment, especially now that everybody is so chummy and nice, but in picking up everything about how they are and picking up the knowledge that I am picking up here, I can see through that. Because I can be quite gullible. So this is literally helping me in the new environments that I'm now encountering and having to be in. So yeah, and still trying to function as myself, but move on code that I'm constantly representing our race in a way that is that upholds us. And I know that's gonna, in doing that, I know it's gonna create negativity. I know it's gonna create like a form of jealousy or create a form of like superiority, like power complex, especially in my work environment. So I need to prepare myself if I am going to go and do what my intention is to do, which is like free most Black people's minds, which they don't want in that environment because they need to keep them institutionalized. So like that blind helper of like the psychologists that in the environment that I'm in are literally there to continue that Assyrian control, and I'm literally there like trying to poke holes in somebody who's supposed to be knowing of the human mind and the vulnerability and but they're operating from a European aspect. So like, yeah, without calling it blatantly racism, I now have to maneuver in a codified way, which might call on me to do that. But yeah, to summarize, I'm really enjoying the context of this chapter and allowing that context to fill in my everyday actions now. And yeah, the breakdown, beautiful. Like there was one statement that she made about the Christian Bible, that she said that no other holy books or no other African culture pertains that or holds that within their spiritual value. But the Christian religion will talk of blood and gore and all these things that are supposed to be disassociated from the clean path. And just the way that she had articulated that, I just thought it was magic. I have not researched so many words than I have had to research in this chapter, I would even say. So I'm enjoying reading this and I look forward to chapter 7.
So yeah, my closing comments. I would just say, be cautious when you are not even be cautious. Just be codified. You know, if you haven't read the full book, and just use what you have read, what you heard, what you learned. Ask questions. Be direct. You know, be honest. You know, just understand that Europeans are not out to save you. Understand that they're not out to help you. It's in their nature actually to try to make your life more unpleasant, and unfortunately that energy has like trickled down to non-white people. So like not only when you're interfacing with white people, now when you're interfacing with Black people and people who are not white, you have to also be very codified and ask questions, because most of the times people words mean separate things. People's meaning of fun means separate things. So yeah, just ask questions. Be very aware that Europeans have historically lied to everyone they came in contact with, and historically have killed everyone they came into contact with. So just two vital things, two pieces of truth. They lie and kill, and they move about freely. So those are my closing comments. I really enjoyed this chapter. I thought I was very constructive.
Thanks, everyone. I will adjourn.